Let us pray. Lord of justice and truth, grant to our Queen, her government, and to members of this council a sense of peace and understanding. We pray for the renewal of our town, that we might grow together in community, building lasting relationships and partnerships in the town. For listening and patience when dealing with division, for local projects and confidence when sowing seeds of hope that will be of the benefit to us all. Renew us with open hearts, open minds, and open wills. Strengthen our independent beliefs in freedom, tolerance, social responsibility, and always working together for the common good. Give us strength and wisdom for the responsibilities we bear, and put in the concerns of Maidstone at the very heart of all that we do. Give us hope and humility to seek reconciliation between parties, to work together and have the courage to do and say what we honestly believe. We pray for our town of Maidstone, for those who have served over the years, in particular tonight to Fran, and those new members who offer their gifts today. Guide our council and our nation that through the inspiration of our own unique faith, we might find a deeper understanding of each other's needs and put an end to discord and bitterness. We pray for our country and the ongoing debates around Brexit, for the leaders of the various parties, and that the media might present a balanced and truthful representation of those who lead. And finally, Lord, give us good grace to build bonds of trust so that together we may work for the goodness of all and the flourishing of our town, we pray. Amen.
Well, I hope everybody is okay after this lovely rainy day. September came very fast. Right. Good evening, members and guests. These proceedings will be recorded by the council, but if anyone else will be recording or filming them, I ask so that the people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. Councillor Mackay? Yes. You're filming? Yeah. Do what you want. Right. Item 2. I have received apologies from absence, and I'm going to ask Debbie to carry on here. If Debbie doesn't mind.
Thank you,
there were quite
Madam
a
Mayor.
few.
We have got quite a lot of apologies. So we have apologies from Councillors Bartlett, Bryce, Eves, Fissenden, Fort, Harwood, Mr and Mrs Hinder, Lewins, McLaughlin, Mrs Robertson and de Wigginton Shepherd.
Thank you, Debbie. Is there anybody else that...
Councillor Hastie's had a family emergency, he's on her way.
Oh, and Councillor, and you was going to do the same. Thank you. Thank you very much. You got that, Debbie? Thank you. Are there any application for dispensations? Thank you.
There have been none received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures or disposable pecuniary interests of a significant interest by members? No, everybody? Thank you. Are there any disclosures by officers?
No, Madam Mayor.
No. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? That's a no again. It is agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Agreed. Thank you. Are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 17th of July 2019 agreed as a correct record? Thank you. Then we go on. Are the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Borough Council held on the 17th of July agreed as correct record? Mayor's announcement. Has everybody got this piece of paper in front of them? He's a really, really sweet gentleman. I did meet him at the British Legion Village on Monday again, and these poor guys are desperate for a flag. Their one is really, really old, and they said they just didn't know where else to go and get money from. So I said I would kindly ask every member if you've got anything left of your devolved budget, even if it was £25, we could all chip together and try and raise some of this money for these really desperate gentlemen who are West Kent, and they do come every time. So I just thought it was a nice thing to do. So thank you very much. If you could let me know if you can help, that would be great. Thank you. And just the rest of it is, it's been busy, busy, busy. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I often think I'd like to thank you all for choosing me and allowing me to do this role, because I have enjoyed it so much. It's just wonderful meeting other people. Yeah, it's been great, and I thank you, every single one of you, for allowing this to go forward. Thank you. So now to business. I would now like to present a certificate to Mrs. Fran Wilson, I nearly said councillor, Mrs. Fran Wilson, confirming her appointment as Honorary Alderman of Maidstone Borough Council. Mrs. Wilson, would you come forward, please? Welcome, Fran. And on behalf of Maidstone Borough Council and the councillors, we'd love to present you with this certificate of your office. It's a lovely flowers. Thank you. I now call upon the group leaders or their representatives who wish to congratulate Mrs. Wilson on her appointment. Councillor Cox first, please.
Thank you very much, your mayor, your worship on this. Fran, it's amazing to be standing here and to say how much the whole of the Liberal Democrat group acknowledge this long-awaited position of Alderman, Honorary Alderman of our borough. I know you will draw great pleasure from this, but I also know that you'll draw amazing pleasure from Tristan being here in our town hall. And to see where you spend goes. But I think having you here now, I think that the mood will be different. But to say how much you deserve this in conclusion, I know that many of us have sought your information from you, your pearls of wisdom on many occasions. But I know that
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I would also now like to call on Councillor Perry, leader of the Conservative Party.
Madam Mayor, Alderman Mrs Wilson, members. I've said a lot of things in the past in praise of you, and I will repeat some tonight. I can't think of anyone in this room who's more deserving of being the first honorary alderman of this borough. I really, really say that on a personal basis. I still miss our philosophical discussions, I really do. You have been a brilliant leader of the Liberal Democrats, and I know you're a very, very astute politician as well. But above all, you've been a fantastic servant of this borough. And I think that is something we all should remember and all strive to be as well. And I think you set an absolutely brilliant example. And as I said before, I think this is very well deserved. And I know on behalf of all my group, we wish you all the very best. Congratulations as well. And we look forward to seeing you in your new role as not honorary, I'll address you as Alderman, Mrs Wilson. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I'd now like to call on Councillor Mrs Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, Fran, isn't this exciting? I'm so pleased for you. I had the honour of being your deputy leader for 2 years. And I confess I was nervous to begin with. I thought, my word, here we have an experienced leader, and I haven't been a councillor for long. I wasn't sure how it's going to turn out. I didn't realise what a hard-working, determined, thorough, hugely experienced person Fran proved to be, had been, and I'm sure continues to be. She certainly earned my complete respect. I'm very pleased to say that actually I got quite fond of her, because we used to have some really good heart-to-heart conversations, which you'd expect between a leader and a deputy. That's any leader and any deputy. And I'm very proud to say that I was her deputy. I learnt a lot. I could never follow in her footsteps. I wouldn't even think of that. But I would like to say, there's just a couple of things I'd like to add. This is such a special occasion because Fran is our first honorary alderman, and we used to have aldermen. I meant to look at the boards actually, but I was late this evening, I do apologise. I wanted to see who the last aldermen were, and I suspect it was before the last government reorganisation in the early 70s. I could be wrong, but I'm sure our Democratic Services people could put us right on that. So this is why the position is honorary, and I cannot think of anybody better suited to be the first person than Fran. I did actually I wanted to mention about the Go Green, Go Wild. Now, you may know that that's a relatively new initiative to get members of our community to get growing stuff in their garden. And I can remember Fran saying to me one day, now look, I don't want to take any credit for this. She said, I've been on the website, I've found out all about it, I'm going to give it to the officers, but I want it to be officer-led. It's not me. So, Fran, your secret is safe with me. I haven't told a soul that it was your initiative. So, I have to say, I won't carry on with all the other plaudits that I'm sure are going to come your way, but I will say that I was pleased to be your support while you were leader. I'm thrilled that you've had this honour bestowed upon you, and I wish you all the very best, and your family must be very proud of you. I'm pleased to see them here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Gooch. I now call upon Councillor Harper on behalf of the leader of the Labour Group.
Thank you. Unlike most people here tonight, I've only known Fran a fairly short period, since 2014. But I think her reputation goes before her and will continue to go before her. She is the consummate politician, as was referred to earlier. She's worked very hard to lead the Liberal Democrat group on this council to a position where they, for a number of years, were the largest group on the council and have had major input into policy making in Maidstone over a long period of time. She was leader of the council only fairly recently, for a couple of years, and during that time as leader of the Labour group I got to work with her and got to know her very well, and I think it's fair to say that Fran's always been a very caring person. She's also, you might say, a sage character, someone everyone can go to and ask for advice, and someone who's very willing to be helpful and to provide advice and help steer people when needed. And I very much, as the chair of the Heritage, Culture and Leisure Committee and of Economic and Regeneration, and also as the leader of the Labour Group, welcomed the opportunity Fran gave as someone you could go and talk to about issues and to actually help inform myself and my group in terms of how we actually might proceed. Fran's a real champion for democracy, and I think that's one of the things we all respect here, and the rights of councillors. And I think one of the things she has made sure over her long period of time in office is to keep the officers on their toes and to make sure that everybody here is working in the interests of our wider community and of the electors and residents of Maidstone Council. I worked closely with her for the last couple of years, as I say, especially on Heritage, Culture and Leisure, where she was the Vice Chair. And Faye's already mentioned the Green Agenda. That's one I know Fran was really interested in pushing in terms of biodiversity and so on, and we've made the climate emergency declaration recently, so hopefully you feel that we're taking that forward as a council. Another area I know you're really still enthusiastic for and involved with is obviously Maidstone Museum, and you're a member of the Maidstone Museum Foundation, and I know you're working very hard there behind the scenes to help make sure that the museum is a success. And I know you're involved in various other areas, and I'm sure you won't retire from public life, although it may take a different form. But as I say, I'd just finally like to say, if it wasn't for you, I don't think Maidstone necessarily be the place it is now, and in particular the support John and your family have given you over a long period of time, because if it wasn't for them, you probably wouldn't have been able to do, I know you wouldn't have been able to do all that tremendous work you have done over such a long period of time. So thank you very much, Fran.
I'm now going to call, thank you, Councillor Harper. I'm now going to call on Councillor Newton just to inform, I know you put your hand up, Clive, but it's only for the leaders to speak tonight. Thank you. Sorry. So, Councillor Newton, please.
Thank you very much. It's very difficult when you're the last one in the row. But when I first walked through that door 9 years ago as a newly elected member for Maidstone Borough Council, you come in here and you're looking around and thinking, oh my gosh. However, the first person that came across and welcomed me here was Fran. And I got to know Fran very well, actually. I think working with her as the first chair of the Heritage, Culture and Leisure Committee, and we all worked together on that, and the museum, and so many things that I could stand here probably as long as all the others, but I do thank you, Fran, for really being a guiding light within the Borough of Maidstone for the things that you've initiated and driven through your own enthusiasm and gaining the enthusiasm of people around you. In particular, I remember your enthusiasm in respect of the Nolan Memorial, which we constructed, and the development of the conservation area in Maidstone. And I know your passion is not going to leave this borough. Just thank you on behalf of anybody that's actually worked with you, and as we all have, and in great detail. And I hope you're being the first modern alderman of Maidstone, that you continue to work with us all. But enjoy your retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. I would now like to ask Mrs Wilson, I keep wanting to say councillor, Mrs Wilson, you now have an opportunity to address the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, visitors and family, the first thing is to say thank you to all of you, everybody in this chamber and those who aren't here tonight. It is such a huge honour. I'm not exactly overwhelmed, I don't get overwhelmed, but it is a huge honour and I take it extremely seriously. So thank you all for this honour. I'm glad tonight you've been a little bit more measured in what you've had to say. Some of my colleagues have heard this, erstwhile colleagues I should say, but my husband said to me not so long ago, if you have much more of this, Fran, I'm going to have to put Turkish doors in the house because your head will get too big. He keeps me very grounded, as you can imagine. I don't want to pull out certain people here because I'm sure to forget somebody, so I thought, so many of you think that somehow I leapt into this world already a fully fledged councillor, but that's not true. And there are people who are not here today for various reasons who were huge influences on me, and I think the influence they had on me could also perhaps help some of you at times. So I'm going to go back to I'm not going to speak for too long, it'll bore you to tears, but I'm going to go back to the very beginning. And the first person who had a huge influence on me was a county councillor called John Frisbee, because he was one of the people that came and when I said, yes, all right, I will run in this by-election, took me around and he said, I'm going to give you some advice. And in essence, he said, Fran, you have to give the residents a reason to vote for you. Never promise them anything you don't think you can deliver. Never tell them something you don't honestly believe in. He said other things too, but they were really the main things he said. And I thought, yes, how right he was. Then I got to, Dan at the time was the leader of the Liberal Democrats and the lead councillor at Maidstone Borough Council. And because I've been involved in highways issues, I said, all right, if I stand and I win, I'd really like to go on the we had a transport committee at the time. I don't think a woman had ever gone on it before, but Dan said, all right. I said, then I'll do anything else you want me to do. And he put me on, we also had housing stock. As you would expect, I'm a female, he put me on the housing committee. So I got to that first meeting and there was a redoubtable Conservative councillor called Sarah Haskett. Some of you will remember her or have heard the name. So I'm sitting there really nervous at my very first meeting thinking, oh, I'm not going to say anything. And suddenly in the middle of the meeting, Sarah Haskett put her hand up and said, through the chair, can I tell that woman there, meaning me, I can't remember what it was she said now, in all honesty, but that lodged, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to say something. If I don't say something, I'm lost forever and a day. What am I going to do? Somebody then said something else which allowed me to put up my hand, so I said, through the chair, could I tell that woman there? And after the meeting, she came up to me and she said, "You did very well. You're going to be all right as a councillor." The moral of that is, don't keep your maiden speech for months. Say something really early on. You really need to do it. Some years later, when Mick Stevens was the then leader of the council, every year he used to say, what committees would you like to be on this year? And I'd done quite a few by then. So I said to him, well, I am interested in strategic issues. I think it's about time I learnt something about P&R. Now, I don't know for the life of me why he wasn't on it for that particular year, but he didn't put himself... And he accepted with such alacrity that if I'd really put two and two together, I would have realised that nobody else wanted to do it. And instead of going on as the junior member, he stuck me straight in as the lead Liberal Democrat. And who was I facing? Eric Hodson and Paul Oldham. That was one of the best learning curves of my entire life. They were really quick, really clever. Eric was in the chair. After a while, I got to know how he did the minutes with officers. And there were a couple of occasions when I said, well, I can see what it says here, but it's not quite right in English, is it? And they got changed slightly. Eric and I became very firm friends, and I learnt a huge amount from him. Now I'm going to come right up to date. Councillor Malcolm Mackay said he enjoyed the spats between Chris Garland and myself. I'm sorry Chris isn't here tonight. Chris and I managed to spark off each other. If he was here, I'm sure he could tell you some of the shafts he aimed at me that actually hit the button, but I remember some I aimed at him. At one budget meeting, I said he was like a young man who just got out of school and received his first pay packet, which really was good in the circumstances there. We loved it. We managed to spark off each other really well, but we were never malicious to each other, ever, and there was genuine respect between us. So what I really want to say is that this house, this chamber, works best when everybody retains respect, when everybody treats each other with courtesy, and when we all remember that the most important thing is we all want to get power here because we believe that the best way to do what we want to do for the residents is to be the party in power. But if you then begin to think that the power, to get the power, any means justifies that, that's when this place falls apart. Because it is, we have political preferences, but it is the people of this borough we are ultimately here for and that we should be trying to do the best for. So I don't want to sound like a headmistress, and I know I'm beginning to. So I'll shut up and say thank you again very, very much from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to publicly thank my family and particularly my husband, because without him I just couldn't have done it ever. And there's one other person I am going to say thank you to, and it'll come maybe as a shock, and that's to the Chief Exec. We both discovered that we had exactly the same profile. Any of you who've done leadership courses will know what I'm talking about. Exactly the same profile, which could have been a recipe for disaster, but we turned it into a strength. We knew we could always trust each other. And that, I think, is really important when you're in these two positions. So, Alison, I do thank you most sincerely. So with that, I'm going to sit down. No, I'm not going to sit down. I'm going to walk out of the council chamber and take my family with me. But thank you very much.
So can we all stand? Thank you, councillors. All be seated. So straight on to item 11, petitions. There are no petitions this evening. There are no questions from members of the public this evening. Item 13, questions from council members. I have received notification that Councillor T. Sams wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee.
Thank you very much. And it's very difficult to follow Fran on any occasion, but with regard to the committee's decision to explore plans for a new garden community in East Lenham, in light of it being the start of a long process and the committee is evaluating this proposal against all the others, can you please inform us how much the process has cost Maidstone residents thus far? Thank you.
The report to Policy and Resources Committee on the 18th of September this year regarding the council-led garden community, in paragraph 2.1, detailed that the costs to date are approximately £75,000 and that these will reach £150,000 by the end of the financial year. Given the question, I'm therefore able to confirm that the exact expenditure to date is £68,817.39.
Thank you. Councillor Sams, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you so much. After the P&R meeting last week, you said, what is before us with the figures calculated, we can deliver good, high-quality homes. Can you give the budget the council has set aside for this project, including the cost of additional staff time, including potential new motorway junction and new station? Can you explain how the council will compensate the residents of Lenham Heath and its neighbours who will ultimately shoulder the economic and human cost of such a large construction on green, valuable agricultural land to help Maidstone's housing numbers? Thank you.
Councillor Sams, I really do feel that if I could turn round and tell you exactly the pennies that we anticipated spending, I really don't feel that I could at this point, because the work that's been done so far has led us to this point, and really only to where Policy and Resources has said we will now proceed. So I really don't feel that I am in the position to expand any more, other than we are proceeding as Policy and Resources have directed. Any costs will obviously be reported back to Policy and Resources, because they will be in there through our expenditure and wouldn't take place without that information coming back to P&R.
Thank you. I have received notification that Councillor J. Sams wishes to ask the question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee.
Thank you. Last Friday, September the 20th, demonstrations were held worldwide, nationally and in Maidstone, with many, many children, students, their parents and many others who support the campaign against the climate change holding peaceful protests. In Maidstone, we were proud to be associated with the protest. It was polite, it was good-humoured, its central message was to speed up any proposed positive actions and that governments and councils must start to take better steps. Would you firstly applaud the actions the children have taken, including supporting them taking time off school, and agree with me that this is an entirely legitimate cause, and support them on any future organised occasion with any future mass strike taking time off school? Please show that, unlike the Secretary of State for Education, you believe that this issue is so significant, affecting the lives and the future of those children, and that their actions need positive support and endorsement.
Thank you very much for your question. I do think that it's a shame that children have had to give up their education to make sure that we all pay attention to climate change. Greta Thunberg has stood up in larger halls than this and has given us all her inspiration as to where we should all be heading with the climate change. It's impressive that they have made a stand and behaved so well when doing so. Maidstone Council recognises the significance of this issue, and we have created a biodiversity and climate change work group, where we have been given the responsibility of identifying the actions the Council needs to deliver to ensure we tackle climate change. The group are looking at the Council's local plan to strengthen our approach and ensuring environmental equality, biodiversity and new developments. They're also talking to the Woodland Trust and our Parks Department about tree coverage in the borough. They're also looking at renewable energy, electric vehicles and initiatives that are working well elsewhere that we could adopt. I photographed only yesterday one of the new charging positions in the King Street car park that's just gone in. They'll also be engaging with residents and in particular with young people to develop the action plan as key stakeholders in the borough's future. I look forward to seeing the action plan when it comes forward to Policy and Resources in April 2020.
Councillor Sams, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, yes. It's impossible to do nothing. Greta Thunberg and Greenpeace campaign was TikTok, time passing. The children said they want action now. The tipping point is thought to be about 11 years, though it may be less, 132 months, 572 weeks, about 4,000 days. Would you agree and show that the children we care and we understand and we stand together with them in this cause? We will be there with them on the next occasion and will do whatever it takes. We will commit our resources and support a stoppage. Furthermore, we ask that the borough organise an assembly inviting delegates from schools and community groups to come together to discuss what we can achieve and to share ideas, and for this to be done within 8 weeks. TikTok, time passing. Thank you.
Councillor Sams 2. Thank you very much. That sounds a brilliant way forward. I think it's very proactive. I will certainly pass that on to the Biodiversity and Climate Change Working Group. Your 8 weeks is not very much, but I'm sure it would be brilliant to engage with schools and see whether they could come here and engage with us. So I will certainly put that forward to the chairman and the group, and I would definitely attend, as I'm sure you would, if that came off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I have received notification that Councillor Brindle wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Has the Chairman of Policy and Resources Committee been consulted by the Director of Finance regarding the disposal of land at Weavering Heath?
I'm grateful to Councillor Brindle for her question, and I welcome the opportunity to explain what is proposed at Weavering Heath. We are required by law to consult on the disposal of any interest in open space land owned by us as a local authority. The disposal in question here is very limited in scope and consists of what is called an easement, allowing a utility company to access the land. The specific utility that is required here is a sewer pipe to serve the proposed new schools on Pope's Field. Whilst I recognise that the siting of the new school has been controversial, I think we would all agree that there is a desperate need for new schools in the area, which this school will help to address. I'm also aware that when contractors carried out the preliminary surveys in advance of the pipe being laid across Weavering Heath, they caused unnecessary damage to the land. Whilst they were legally required to make good this damage, greater care should, and we will ensure that it does, take place and should have been done anyway. In drawing up the agreement for the easement, officers will therefore be very careful to ensure that the impact on open space is minimised and proper care will be maintained by the contractors. We'll take these steps to ensure that appropriate penalties are built into the legal agreement. So as far as whether I was consulted on this matter, the Constitution delegates authority for dealing with such matters to the Director of Finance and Business Improvement. Having said that, He and I have regular contact on property related matters, and I can assure Councillor Brindle that all the actions by this team are taking have my full support and knowledge.
Councillor Brindle, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, thank you. Why were the ward members not consulted about this in turn? And is he aware that he is facilitating a highly controversial and unpopular development through the council's property hat, especially as there is an outstanding application for this area to be given village green status?
Sorry, could you just clarify what you mean by the council's property hat?
I understand that as a council you act on behalf of the land that you own or look after. As a property owner.
You've pointed out that this is a very controversial site. That has been apparent from the outset. Various MPs got involved at different times, but we are where we are with the planning process. And as I stated earlier, we're required to actually give them permission to lay the pipes underneath this land. So I don't really see what else we could do. We're not destroying the land by laying the pipes underneath the land. So I don't really see why we are being held responsible for anything other than doing what we have to do, I suppose, by law.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Right. I was informed that both Councillor Sands have got to go to work. Councillor Garland, would you wish to come and join your group? Right, everybody. I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Cox, you may speak for 5 minutes. Look, I can't watch everything.
Thank you very much. Obviously, since most people have probably been on holiday since we last met, I was just going to remind some people about the long-term aspirations which we hold through our strategic plans. Those are embracing growth, enabling infrastructure, our homes and communities, a thriving place, and safe, clean and green. And to that end, I would like to let you know about the Kent Housing Group Awards that are happening. The housing team has recently entered the Kent Housing Group Awards for the first time, and 4 of the nominations have been shortlisted. Those are Excellent Partnership, the Housing First Project, working with Golding Homes and Medway Housing Society in Porchlight, Excellent in Development for Lenworth House, Excellent Young Professional, Michael Collins, and Excellent in Private Sector, that's the Home Finder Project. So I'm sure you'll all be very keen to wait for the 30th of October when those awards will be given out at the Hilton Hotel. So good luck to everybody who's concerned with that. Also looking to waste crime, since March 2018, the waste crime team have seized 20 vehicles, 4 of which have been crushed, 2 have been sold, with the profits going back into local services. The team have issued 5 fixed penalty notices for fly tipping and 2 low-level fly tipping. 4 more incidents are currently being investigated. Maidstone Borough Council's waste crime team will continue to take a hard line on the approach against fly tippers and illegal waste carriers. We will take a zero-tolerance approach to anyone found committing a waste crime. We'll prosecute anyone found dumping waste illegally and using covert CCTV if necessary. Fly tipping is a serious crime and is expensive for this council to clear away. Looking to clean air for schools, Maidstone Borough Council is also working with local school children, highlighting the importance of the clean air quality around schools. Working in partnership with Tunbridge Wells, Spale Borough Council, Maidstone Borough Council, we're asking everyone to help make the air we breathe cleaner and healthier for all. The Council's environmental health team is encouraging people this Thursday to give a car a rest and take a walk or cycle or the train to help reduce air pollution across the borough. They're also asking those who need to drive to switch off their vehicles when stationary to reduce pollution around the schools and around Maidstone. When we look at safe, clean and green, the domestic abuse as well that happens around the town, around the borough, Maidstone Borough is working with partners to raise the awareness of domestic abuse and support victims to ensure as many people as possible know how to get help if they need it or to assist others that do so. In the last 12 months, 2,861 crimes were recorded in Maidstone, which involved domestic abuse. As more people are having to encourage to come forward to report the crimes. To continue to raise awareness, Maidstone Borough Council's Community Protection Team has teamed up with Kent Police, Kent County Council and the local domestic abuse charities and is leading the work in a series of campaigns to address this issue. I'm sure you would all have been expecting me to mention the Lenham Garden community, which is going forward through the call for sites. The Policy and Resources Committee have decided to continue exploring the possibility of a garden community to the east of Lenham. This could provide around 5,000 homes as well as a community, healthcare, education, retail, business, leisure and green space in a new integrated and sustainable settlement. Maidstone Borough Council is committed to achieving excellent quality development in the heart of Maidstone. I also could not let go the 5 town centre development sites. All town centres are changing and will continue to do so. Therefore, it's right that Maidstone Borough Council takes a proactive approach to place shaping, engaging with landowners and developers alike to give the clarity that about these developments it would be looking towards the future, rather than just simply responding to the developer-led proposals as they might arise. Therefore, the planning guidelines documents for the 5 town centre opportunities have been given out, and the Council believes that these locations are suitable for mixed-use residential-led developments. They will have the potential to maximise some of the town's untapped assets, such as the river frontage, sustainable transport hubs, while providing much-needed infrastructure, business space and homes. Well, that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Before I call on about anybody else and the other leaders and any other councillor that puts their hand up tonight, we do know that we only ask questions on what we've heard from the leader. So if I stop you, don't be offended, but you know, the rules are the rules. So now I would like to call on Councillor Perry, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cox. Excuse me, I'm struggling. I've made a load of notes. I've got the right set of glasses on, so I can probably read them all right. First thing, you mentioned about waste crime, and I think that's incredibly important. And I'm glad to see that you and the Liberal Labour coalition, if I can describe it, has taken up the Tory policy, which has been something we've progressed for a long, long time. And I think we've been champions of that. So I do appreciate it. And if there's any more of our policies you want to take, we're happy to discuss with you. You mentioned about safe, clean and green. And I think we had a very interesting discussion last night at the Che Committee on the Crime and Disorder Committee. And I think it's fair to say a lot of work is being done, and I appreciate that. However, I think it's also fair to say that we can be a little complacent in this area. And I think the recommendations that came out from last night's discussions on this particular subject were very important and very useful. And I hope they will be followed up. I would also like to mention one other thing. Here I'm going to have a point of order thrown at me, I'm pretty well sure. But Madam Mayor, the leader didn't mention your initiative on the older person's tea party you organised. And that was absolutely brilliant. I'd like to say that here because it was an activity that a lot of us in this room took part in, and I think is well worth saying. And I would like to thank you for your initiative on that. It was absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to put my glasses back on again now, so I need to carry on reading here. The one other thing I'll just mention about the Kent Housing Group initiatives, I think that's very, very good, and I look forward to hearing, hopefully our people will be successful, and I appreciate that. I think I'll stick there, and again, thank you, Leader, for your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I now call upon Councillor Mrs Gooch, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a funny thing having Fran here this evening, receiving the honorary aldermanship, because it was Fran's strength and determination that helped us get through the previous, I won't say get us to the local plan, but she helped get us to the examination in public. And I think as we embrace growth, as our leader has said now, we will need the strength of 1,000 people to get us through to the next examination in public. Because we are in the middle of a very ambitious programme, not only in housing, but I congratulate our officers in the, hopefully we're going to win some prizes with the wonderful projects that we've done, building homes for either temporary accommodation or market, whatever it is. So we've made huge strides, but let's forget that strength we are all going to need, and I think that's worth saying. I'm delighted actually that it was Tory policy apparently about the waste crime. Actually, I don't care whose policy it was, because I think we achieve a lot more together, sharing each other's policies. And if the Tories have got all the good ideas, so what? Bring it on, let's hear it. And I'm sure that the Lib Dems and the Labour have got some. Paul, I know you're back from Canada, help us all. But anyway, I would hope to say that I do wish that we all look out. Domestic abuse is such a serious problem. We don't actually know what goes on behind closed doors. We really don't. So please, be the eyes and ears, be there for our residents. And I think that'll do me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't talk just for the sake of it.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. I'd now like to call on Councillor Mackay, please, Leader of the...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Clean air. Can the Leader of the Council reaffirm the commitment made at P&R to...
Sorry, I'm stopping you there. We're not on questions. You're picking up on what the leader said.
All right, responding to what the leader of P&R, the leader of the council made. The town centre sites are controversial. They will be debated hotly, and people are entitled to their opinions. Let's not confuse that. It's called democracy. The sites will come before strategic planning, and I'm sure again they will be interrogated. And sometimes in planning terms, what is someone's beauty is another person's carbuncle. So let's be open-minded about this. And can I say, I look forward to the council enacting the clean air by planting urban trees in the town centre where our air quality is poorer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Lastly, I'd like to call on Councillor Powell, Leader of the Independent Maidstone Group. Thank you
very much, Madam Mayor. If I can just pick up on one particular part, which is this talk about Lenham Heath. It's been touched on tonight. It was touched on earlier on in questions to the leader. This really does give me a great deal of concern, and it's not going to be the only time that I speak on this coming over future months. But there was an article that appeared in one of our local papers last Friday evening, which clearly showed a report that was produced in March of this year. Now, for a report of that size to take place in March, it must have been a good few weeks beforehand that company, I think it's Barton Wilmore, was actually instructed to put that together, which takes us back to January. Might be wrong, don't know the exact dates. I'm sure that somebody can fill me in on the details sometime. But given there's been 300 other landowners that have actually brought their sites to the table, which are not going to be determined for a number of weeks, I think it's very, very unfair that one particular site has been given special privilege over everything else, possibly at the detriment of these other landowners who have probably spent lots of time, lots of effort and lots of money preparing their own sites. I will be asking questions. Tonight's not the right night, as you kindly pointed out, Madam Mayor. But it does seem that this particular site, and again I might be wrong, and I will be corrected, and I'll always apologise if I am wrong, but it seems that this site has actually been decided beforehand and then brought to the council. And if that is the case, that is extremely wrong. And I will say no more, but obviously there are still questions to ask. But thank you.
Thank you, leaders. I will now open up this item to questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. Questions must be related to the issues raised by the leader and other group leaders in their speeches. They will be answered directly by the questioner and will not require a response from all leaders. So I do have Councillor English first on my list.
Two questions to Councillor Cox. First of all, can I have details of what communication strategy is in place to make sure that all miscreants and potential offenders who may be moved to donate their refuge and waste to the borough streets are fully aware of the actions that we are taking? So could you outline the strategy for communicating this as widely as possible? Secondly, could you outline in as simple of words as possible the clear distinction between the borough's role as a property owner and potential developer and the role of Strategic Planning Committee in determining what sites go forward for the review of the local plan, as there seems to be some degree of confusion. So if you would like to set that out. On an associated point, in relation to sites, would you agree with me, Mr. Leader, that whilst the opportunity sites may be an opportunity indeed, but the devil is in the detail, and members of the public should not conclude that what has been published so far will necessarily be what is actually agreed by Strategic Planning Committee?
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Councillor English. I'm going to go in reverse order because it would appear to be a lot easier. Yes, it would appear that it all seems to be done and dusted if you look in the Downs Mail. And I don't really see how what's proposed here is set in stone at all. These are, I suppose, aspirations. These are things that could be done. We do not necessarily own the Broadway site. Therefore, how can we say what's exactly going to happen? We can't. But we can offer what we would like to see and would like them to include. But no, we aren't going to be putting a 12-storey, and I counted, plus 2 bits at the top. I think that's maybe some sort of plant room. But however, what's been given out to the press, or what they've come to the conclusion of, beggars belief some ways. Very, very strange. So, no, they are not set in stone. This is not a planning application. They're not even pre-applications. They are just what we would like to see there, rather than somebody come along and put, I don't know, a quarry there. Someone could find that we've got amazing amounts of some stone beneath there. But we wouldn't then know how to control that if we didn't look at what the availability was around it, what was near it, how these sites link. We do not own all of these sites. We may own Granada House, but we do not own the Lenworth House, the Roots building. We don't own the Broadway. We don't own the land that currently houses the Travel Lodge, Asda. Other sites are available, but we do not own these, and therefore we are not saying this is exactly what you're going to get. That's what our residents are being led to believe, but I don't really know why, because this is not what is set in stone. I've got two other things. He wants answers. He wants loads of answers. The separation between the planning system and what we are trying to do as master planner for the garden community could not really be clearer. The planning department do not know, or didn't know, up until the submission for the call for sites, what was going to be proposed there. And in the same way, this work doesn't just get pulled out and someone go, oh, we used this in Aberystwyth, let's have it in Maidstone. We looked around the borough. These companies are specialists at what they do. We looked all over the borough, as far down towards Paddock Wood, over to the extremities where we're looking east of Lenham. We looked to the north, up towards Gillingham, towards Medway. We looked where we could get that sort of numbers of houses. 5,000 plus is being asked by Councillor Garton. We should go beyond 5,000. Well, it's difficult to find the correct land. And even once you find the right size of land, you might not then, once you then get the go-ahead to look at it more closely, after you do the geology and all the other assessments that cost a lot more money, you might find that they're not correct. It might get turned down at the SPI stage. We have 300 plus sites, so I'm led to believe. I haven't seen a single one other than ours. But I wouldn't be standing there going, this is the only one we can choose. There may be other garden sites that have been put forward. I don't know. The correct department does, and those will be put forward to SPI, to be looked at and assessed and sieved. So no, at the moment, the media seems to be doing the work for us. But they're not even doing that for us, because it's not our job to design what's going to go there. So we can't say that's what it's going to look like, because we don't know yet. We can all say it's rubbish and put things all around the town, but until we really know what's going to be put forward by the landowner, not us, we don't know what it is. But we'd like to have more control and like to say, no, we don't really feel that's correct to have that there. We need to have a health facility there. We need to have the doctor's surgeries, because of course we're going to put the infrastructure in. If we're going to build houses, the community infrastructure levy will provide that. But until the NHS tell us which doctor's surgeries are able to increase in size, or the fact that we might need a new one in our town centre, we can't plan for that. Because we're not planning. We're not doing that here. We're showing what we would like to aspire to do, to show the developers, to show the landowners that we would like to have a say when it comes to what's going to be put there. The details of the... Sorry, I missed the first question. I've got details of...
I'm sorry, I want to stop you in mid-flow, and I know you've got to answer the question. Could you do it a bit quicker, please?
I've got 8 minutes.
The time is running out. The time is running out for my
But I
list.
thought that's what the whole idea
Sorry,
was,
Lee.
Madam Mayor. That what the idea was that I was asked a question and therefore I answer it. I only had 5 minutes there. And he did ask 3 questions. Would you let me discuss the first one with you privately? And I'll take another question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councillor English. That's really nice of you. Now I'd like to ask Councillor Pearl, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, but I feel the leader has somewhere covered my question already.
Thank you very much. Wow. I would not... Now, play nicely. I would like to call on now Councillor David Burton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I may be in danger of reiterating the point, but as chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee, let me give my assurances to the councillor opposite. There's an absolute wall between aspirations that may be designed and created in policy and resources, and the chairman opposite is responsible, versus the planning decisions that will be made by the members of my committee. No consideration of any site has taken place yet. I think I speak for all the members of that committee. No preference will be given to any site over and above any other, whether the council have an interest or otherwise. It will be a fair, transparent and open process.
Can you turn it into a question, David? Go on, go on.
And I trust the leader of the council will support me in that stance.
I would love to offer you my trust, and I give you my trust. I support you fully. SPY is there for that reason. That is part of the separation. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Are you happy with that answer, David? Yes? Well done. Councillor Harper, please.
Two questions for the leader of the council. The first one is picking up what he was talking about in terms of Thursday, when people are being suggested to leave their cars at home for a day. I just wondered if the leader would be joining us at the Maidstone Cycle Fest event on Saturday, which I think everybody has been invited to. And secondly, going back to the town centre development sites, we had a public meeting in Fant last week, which became very clear there's a massive amount of public concern over the 5 sites, in particular the West Maidstone proposals affecting Fant and Bridge walls. Would the leader undertake that before the process goes any further, a full public consultation exercise will take place with residents in those wards and elsewhere in the town centre to make sure that the proposals being suggested at this stage fit with the ideas of the current communities in those areas?
Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harper. I hope you've enjoyed some maple syrup and pancakes in the last couple of weeks. I'm afraid Cyclefest falls on the first time I'm able to go and see my daughter at university after being taken down there by her mother. They only gave out 1 car pass, so I wasn't allowed to go. But I'm going down to take some other bits and pieces, and I'm afraid, due to something else, I can't even leave till 12 o'clock as it is. But I understand that you have our parliamentary candidate, parliamentary candidate James Willis may attend, although he's just had a baby. Well, he hasn't. That really would be a video, wouldn't it? But anyway, I believe they had a baby yesterday, and I'm sure you'll all find out about it on Twitter or Facebook. On your point about the public inquiry, I think we will be doing that as we look at the plan review. That will sort of come through in the process. But I do understand what you're saying, because Councillor Rose was at the MPPF briefing and heard an awful lot of information that I think she'd wished she'd heard before your public meeting. And I think what would be very good is to see if we can get the department who gave that briefing to us to possibly engage if you have some questions from your own residents. I don't think we should call it a public meeting per se, but I definitely agree, because Well, obviously it will be, because you'll be inviting members of the public.
Excuse me, could
But it
you
isn't a
address the
consultation.
council, please?
I'll best be talking here, but I was addressing the council as I was talking to one specific councillor, Madam Mayor. Thank you. So I hope I've answered, and I can't turn around to you because I've got to look at this bunch over here. It's nice. There's only 2 rows of you. But I hope those will please you, Alderman Harper.
Thank you very much, councillors. Well, no one else has put their hand up to... Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one to the Leader of the Council. Are we still on target to complete the local plan review by the end of 2021? Because we don't actually want any nasties coming down our way, and we certainly don't want to be in the situation when we have another developer's charter on our hands. So can you give me some crumbs and some words of wisdom and maybe a cast iron guarantee too? Thank you.
You could, and leave me 1 minute 28 seconds. What I'd like to say is everything appears to be on course. The call for sites happened, it closed at the correct time. That has now been all gathered together and ratified that they're all correct in how they've given their information. We will be receiving all 300 or so sites in due course at the appropriate time. They will then go out to the parishes and the local councillors, and then it'll be given out to the public. I'm sure actually the public may even see them before that, but hey-ho. So yeah, cast iron couldn't absolutely do that because I haven't got my crystal ball polished this evening, but I hope that all offices and all departments have enabled everything to come as it should do. And I know, because I'm supporting him wholeheartedly, that Councillor Burton has got his foot on the pedal and it's not the brake.
Thank you very much, councillors. That's the end of question time. I would like to now go on to item 15. I call upon Councillor Cox to move the recommendation of the Policy and Resource Committee and the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee related to the updated capital statutory recommendations on page 11. This is the one.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recommend that the updated capital strategy attached to Appendix A, including the updated capital programme, set out as Table 1 with the strategy, be agreed.
Second by Councillor Harvey. Anybody else like to speak? Is the recommendation... Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you, councillors. Item 16. I call upon Councillor Harvey to move the recommendation of the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee relating to the committee's annual report for 2018-19, recommendations on page 33.
I move the recommendations on page 33.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Cox, thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you very much. I call upon Councillor Webb to move the recommendation of Democracy and General Purpose Committee. Excuse me, got to turn the page. Regarding amendments to the Constitution, recommendations on page 44.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendations on page 44 to agree amendments to the Constitution related to outside bodies.
Have I have a seconder? Councillor Gooch. Councillor Gooch, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No, thank you. So are the recommendations agreed? Thank you very much. I call upon Councillor David Burton to move the recommendation as the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee relating to the making of the Lewes Neighbourhood Plan, recommendations on page 69.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, please join me in the prompt dispatch of the matter of business of agenda item 18, but at the same time recognising the colossal commitment, the many contributions, the countless hours of consideration that those that made the plan put into it. And in moving the matter as per the papers, please join with me in offering congratulations to the people of Lewes. I so move as per the papers.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Grigg, thank you. Is the recommendation agreed, councillors? Thank you. Item 19, there is no reports from the Community Housing Environment Committee on this occasion. 20, there are no reports from the Policy and Resource Committee on this occasion. There are no reports from the Licensing Committee. 22, there are no reports from the Communities Housing Environment Committee, acting as the Crime and Disorder Committee on this occasion. 23, a notice of motion. I call upon Councillor Perry to move his motion related to access to information. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We rushed through the agenda items so quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we nearly forgot the whole damn thing. Yeah. A small point before we start. There, in the penultimate line, the words paragraph 3 of, I would like to delete because actually this is a bit too specific. Sorry. It's a bit too specific and they should be taken out and then read as, yeah, it's a more correct version. Do you require me? I'll read this out because it's a formal thing. Members of this council are elected by the residents of this borough to represent their interests, and in order for members to carry out their duties effectively, the council agrees that all committee agendas, reports and information relating to items on the agenda, and in brackets minutes, etc., should be made available to all members, including information made exempt from publication under Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Now, just before I go on, I've now read the briefing note that was sent. I got it rather late, and it kind of surprised me just a little bit, I have to say. As the mover of the motion, I would like to have had a little bit more time to read it. Clearly, the need to know does not apply to the mover of the motion, which, again, rather surprised me. But what I would like to say is this. I believe this is a fundamental point of principle here. We are 55 members elected by our residents to represent them. And it is for us to decide what we require. This is not for unelected officers. Now, this is not a criticism of officers at all, because I know they do a great job here, but it is for us to decide what should we decide we need. And I think this is a fundamental point. The common law is quoted, but only actually one case. And in fact, there's a lot more cases around. And the English common law is notorious a little bit for its inflexibility of interpretation. And even this week, we've had an interesting comment from the justices in the Supreme Court, which is all about also representation and the right to be represented and have the right to speak. And I won't go into the rights and wrongs of that, but just to say it's a basic, I think, democratic principle, whether it's a national government or local government issue, that it's the elected members who make the policy and make the decision of what they should decide to receive. It is not for them to be told by officers or civil servants that they can or cannot have a particular piece of document. And we have to have trust. And I accept there is a risk in all this. And I've worked in central government, and I know exactly what the risks are. But that is an important part of our democracy. And these are the points I really wanted to say tonight in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak?
Thank you,
Sorry. I need a seconder. Sorry. Councillor Burton, David Burton. Thank you. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Burton? Okay, thank you. Sorry, could I go back to Councillor Clark, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion. I also agree with the sentiment that we should have access to all of the information that we need to perform our jobs as councillors. And there have been times in the past where I felt that there's been certain information that's been a challenge to receive, and I really do feel that we not only need these yellow pages, the other reports, the various background reading that we need to make a decision, but we also should be able to work with officers freely between meetings to gather that information as it comes in. And so I'm making a change to this, and I'm going to read my amendment because I really want to simplify it. I don't want to get caught up in the minutiae, because I think that we don't need to distinguish. We just need any information that we need to perform our work. We don't need to make it onerous where officers have to get information to every member, but when we need information, we should have the ability to get it freely. So my amendment is, members of this council are elected by the residents to this borough to represent their interests. In order for members to carry out their duties effectively, this council agrees that all committee agendas and reports relating to items on the agenda, including minutes, supporting documentation and urgent updates, will be provided to committee members and are made available to any other interested members on request. And that's the extent of my amendment to this motion.
Thank you. Liz, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I've been asked to second this amendment.
Okay.
It in some ways overlaps with Councillor Perry because I think he was actually taking out already the last line of his amendment as a drafting amendment. So to a degree, this amendment addresses that issue anyway. I wouldn't quite put the issue in the terms Councillor Perry did, but I would say that there is a lot of case law in this area. In my research, I've been able to establish at least a dozen cases, and of course there is also the local government statutory code of conduct in relation to this issue. The interesting thing is that the interpretation does vary, but there is a number of cases I do want to cite. For example, in relation to the statement of Lord Brightman, he went into his judgment, and I quote from it, "In the case of a councillor with a reasonably based concern for a problem of this sort," he was referring to access to information, "who is not a mere busybody, it seems to me that the bias, if any, should be in favour of allowing access to information rather than concealing information." There are a number of other cases that have been cited in the legal literature. Granger goes on to extend that principle and to say that it is very difficult for the council in that case to justify its refusal, and it was almost Wednesbury unreasonableness, and that was extended upon by the notable case of Sheffield City Council versus the then leader of the Liberal group, David Chadwick, where the council had been held to be totally unreasonable in withholding information which was needed because, as leader of the opposition, but not a member of the relevant committee or a substitute member of the relevant committee, he had a right to know about issues that affected the council as a whole. And it is in this area of issues that affect the council as a whole, where someone is not a member of the relevant committee, that we have fallen into the trap of, upon occasion, ruling out of order members' legitimate requests for information, that there are legal cases to strongly support us having that information. And the case where my colleague, Councillor Field, as he was at the time, was refused information, which was quite clearly relevant to a major policy issue of this council affecting all members, was, in my view, an erroneous decision not supported by the legal literature. But we don't need to determine this tonight because there are many complex legal cases and judgments to look at. some of which support my position and some that do not. So Democracy Committee must really take this seriously and do a good job of deep investigation and not rush to judgment.
Thank you, Councillor English. I would like to now, Councillor David Burton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And speaking to the amendment at this stage, what I'm actually seeking is a little bit of clarity about the intent here. I think the word all says it, but for clarity, exempt matters and yellow pages. That's I want to. And then at the latter stage of that paragraph, interested members on request, standing request. My history in this matter is such that when I joined this council and I was invited to select which agendas I would choose to peruse or participate in, I ticked everything. And in those early days, it was a big wedge of paper. But I actually felt duty-bound to take a general overview of all matters and consciously did that. Latterly, it becomes electronic. It was a difficult transition, but I made it. There's no cost implication in that manner to the council for providing such information. And I was, I believe, an utter casualty when spontaneously, without consultation, one of the directors said, oh, you need to be aware of the report tonight. No problem, I've got that, and found that I was locked out of all yellow pages without consultation. I was very disappointed when later on the leader actually said to me, I gave that instruction. But that's another matter. So my stance is such that I want always to have access to those yellow pages. I can cite one example where it was utterly important. There was an urgency committee that committed to a judicial review process. There is no way I would have been able to have sight of those papers given the short notice of the meeting and going through the process of request on a one-by-one basis for those particular papers that I could have actually read it myself and attended that meeting as a visiting member. And there's an irony in that. I can visit, I can listen, I can contribute, but I can't actually see the piece of paper currently that they're actually all discussing. So I want the clarity that it's not on request that humbly I ask the monitoring officer, may I have them today, may I have them tomorrow, that if I ask for all yellow pages, I get all yellow pages. So I seek clarity from the mover that that's the intent.
So absolutely, I would give... Sorry, Madam Mayor.
So you would like to see that change? No. Right. Yeah, would you like to speak? Sorry, Brian.
So absolutely. In actual fact, I come from an engineering background, and the one thing, if you're working on software, you try not to define too specifically. You try to look at the way you can umbrella, and then you don't get caught out because things change underneath. So this is the simplest form that this could take, where we have access to all of the information that is on the agenda, if you're sitting in the committee, and all members have access to that should they want it, even if they don't sit on that committee. So I know that at the moment we have yellow pages, we may have green pages later on, we may have certain things that are available to certain people and not to others. I think if we start going down to the point where we start specifying them, we might find that there's a little bit of wiggle room. And I think this amendment just brings it up a level, and it gives us a catch-all across the whole of the council for all committees and all members to have access to everything.
Next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think a lot of this is based on trust, and it's almost as if we have lost the link between members, officers, and the link between us all, which is trust and working together. And I think the trust thing is the key to all of this. I accept Councillor Burton's point about the urgency committee. However, my recollection, having sat on the committee that day, was we only got the papers when we walked into the room and we had reading time.
I had them before online.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Burton, I didn't. I sat on the committee and I received them on that day, and we were given time to read them and digest them. But I'm not going to get into a row about that. I think there are times when exempt information could apply just to a particular ward, and therefore maybe only certain ward members want that information. That said, we are ward members. We're also called borough councillors. We represent the whole borough. So we should be acting on the good of the whole borough. But the amendment I can accept, but I am concerned that you've taken out the word, Councillor Clark, exempt. I just feel exempt needs to be somewhere. Although it says all committee agendas and reports, I just feel that exempt has a slightly different meaning and a slightly different status. So if we were able to say, including minutes, supporting documentation, take out the word and, urgent updates and relevant exempt information, I can accept that. But I am concerned you don't have the word exempt in there. Because I do think, I accept what you're trying to do, keep it simple, but I just don't want anyone to be able to say, well, hang on, it's not quite specific, therefore, let's not worry. But as I say, this comes back to trust, and I think somewhere we need to implement that by allowing members exempt information, knowing that you can trust them.
Okay, councillors, before I call the next person, these are only suggestions tonight because this is all going to go back to the Democracy Committee. So quite happy, all your suggestions have been noted. So now I'd like to call on Councillor Matt Burton, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just an excuse to get my badge I'm wearing onto the cameras. So, no, actually, on reflection, Madam Mayor, I believe that perhaps I wish to ask a question about the minutiae of where this might lead. I believe perhaps on reflection that is better addressed when this comes to Democracy Committee at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and happy birthday, Matt. I would like to call on Councillor Malcolm Mackay, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I first read the motion put forward by Councillor John Perry, I thought it was saying that all confidential and exempt papers, by default, would go to every single councillor, which I thought was unnecessary. And I believe, but I support the principle of what he's saying. All members should have access, even if they're not on that committee. Yeah. But I don't think they should be shared willy-nilly just because they're available. They should be available to all members if they request that information and they believe they have a right to see them, a wish to see them. So I would support the amendment, and if it includes the word exempt, so be it. So, in principle, I support very much this motion on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm really in dangerous territory here because I'm agreeing with Councillor Mackay, but it's not the first time. Yeah, I totally agree.
Are you summing up now, John?
Yeah, I'm going to, it'll go to the Democracy Committee, so I won't delay everybody anymore, but I support the view, and by Councillor Batmore as well. I would like to see the word exempt in because it clarifies and it leaves no wriggle room, if you like, for the future. That's all I'm really saying on this, but it'll go to the Democracy Committee. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. So the motion now stands, referred to the Democracy and General Purpose Committee, as does the amendments, yes. All noted. Right. Item 24, reappointment of the non-voting parish council representative on the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee. Councillor Harvey.
I move that Councillor Peter Calling of Teeston Parish Council be reappointed to serve as a non-voting parish council representative on the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee and the hearing panel as required for a 3-year term of office with immediate effect.
Thank you very much. Is that second? Councillor English. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Look, you're all... Look at them, look, they're all ready. Way. Thank you very much, everybody.
Any other business?
Just so quiet. Sorry, Councillor Moore.
Oh, sorry.
It was just to do with the last item, just to say thank you to Councillor Peter Cooling for actually putting his nomination forward.
Brilliant.
Although it was the only nomination, we've certainly worked with him in the past, and I think we're very grateful to have him. So if you are watching, Councillor Cooling, thank you very much indeed, and we look forward to continue to seeing you at the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee.
Yeah, so everybody agrees, I take it? Thank you very much. Thank you. I would just like to inform everybody, thank you very much for such a good meeting. They did get permission to walk out. Mrs. Wilson has asked me to invite members to join her in the bouvet room for the light refreshments following the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you. Oh, God.
Straight out there, I'm going for it.
Well, yeah.